The golden sun hung heavy over the African savanna, turning the endless stretch of dry grass into a sea of shimmering brass. Under the brutal heat of high noon, the earth itself seemed to glow. The soil here was a pale, dusty yellow, cracked and thirsty, stretching out toward a horizon that blurred in the rising heat waves. In this vast openness, a small tribe of primitive hominids moved with the quiet, practiced grace of those who knew that in the wild, silence is the best shield. They were a part of this landscape, their skin bronzed by the sun, and their eyes always scanning, always searching, near a cluster of 3 ancient baobab trees. The only giants brave enough to stand in this parched clearing, the tribe had found a moment of uneasy rest. The trees' thick, gray trunks looked like the legs of stone elephants, casting short, sharp shadows that offered little relief in the overhead glare. A young mother sat huddled near a smooth, sun-baked rock. Her fingers, callous and clever, brushed against the dusty ground as she watched her infant. The baby was a tiny spark of life in a harsh world, sitting in the yellow dirt and clutching a rounded river stone. To the infant, the stone was a treasure. To the mother, the infant was the entire world. A few yards away, the elders of the tribe stood like statues. Their lean bodies were tense, their nostrils flaring as they tasted the dry air. They were not looking at the beauty of the golden plains. They were looking for the things that move within them. For a long time, the only sound was the steady, rhythmic chirping of thousands of cicadas, a wall of noise that usually meant everything was as it should be. The tribe foraged quietly, picking at hardy roots and seeds, their movement synchronized with the swaying of the parched stalks. It was a scene of ancient peace, a routine played out for 1,000 generations under the same unforgiving sun. Then the world changed. It started with the wind. The breeze, which had been blowing steadily from the north, suddenly swirled and died. With it, the deafening chorus of the insects vanished. The silence that followed was heavy and terrifying, pressing down on the tribe like a physical weight. The mother froze, her hand hovering just inches from her child's shoulder. She felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. The elders turned their heads slowly, their eyes locking onto a patch of tall, yellow grass just 20 feet away. The grass was moving, but it wasn't moving with the wind. The stalks rippled inward, swaying in a tight, focused line toward the center of the camp. Something massive and invisible was slicing through the vegetation, silent as a ghost and twice as deadly. The yellow soil beneath the mother's feet seemed to vibrate with a weight she couldn't yet see. A predator had not just found them, it had breached their inner circle. In that breathless moment, the savanna held its breath, and the golden light felt suddenly cold. The silence of savanna did not break. It shattered in one heartbeat. The golden grass exploded outward as a massive, scarred male lion launched himself into the clearing. He was a blurred streak of muscle and amber fur, moving with a speed that defied his heavy frame. There was no warning roar, only the rhythmic, terrifying thud of heavy paws striking the dry yellow soil. Dust kicked up in small clouds as he closed the distance. The mother barely had time to gasp before the predator was upon them. With a surgical precision born of 1,000 hunts, the lion leaned down and snatched the infant by the thick animal skin wrap bundled around its waist. The tribe erupted into a collective, primal scream that tore through the heavy afternoon heat. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated horror. The mother's voice rose above the rest, a raw and piercing howl that seemed to vibrate against the gray bark of the baobab trees. She lunged forward, her fingers clawing at the empty air where a child had been just a second before. But the lion was already retreating. He did not run in fear. He trotted with a cold, arrogant confidence, the infant dangling from his jaws like a prize. His golden eyes remained fixed on the horizon, toward a jagged rocky outcrop that shimmered in the distance. Panic usually scatters a tribe, but today, grief turned into a desperate, furious courage. As the lion's tawny tail vanished into the taller stalks of grass, the elders did not flee. Instead, they dove for the ground, their calloused hands grasping for jagged stones and heavy, blackened branches. They were small compared to the king of beasts, and they possessed no claws or fangs, yet they formed a frantic, trembling line of defiance. The yellow earth was kicked up by their dancing feet as they began to chant, a low, rhythmic booming meant to challenge the silence of the plains. The mother stood at the front of this fragile wall, her chest heaving and her eyes locked on the predator's path. She was no longer a victim. She was a force of nature. Every step the lion took away from them felt like a physical tear in her soul. The tribe began to move forward in a jagged formation, clacking stones together to create a sharp, metallic ring that cut through the wind. They were walking directly into the jaws of death, driven by a bond that was older than the savannah itself. As the sun began its slow descent, casting long, distorted shadows across the yellow dirt, the distance between the hunters and the hunted grew. The lion stopped for a brief moment, turning his scarred head to look back at the tiny, screaming figures following him. In that look, there was a heavy realization. The wilderness was cruel, but it was about to witness a spectacle it rarely saw. The moment fear dies and a mother's love takes its place. The golden shadow moved on, leaving only the sound of sobbing breath and the steady, determined beat of stones against the earth. The pursuit reached its breaking point at the edge of a deep, dry ravine where the yellow soil crumbled into a jagged scar across the earth. The massive lion stopped, turning his heavy, scarred head to face the small band of hominids. He stood his ground, the infant still clutched in his jaws, his golden eyes burning with a mixture of confusion and primal warning. But the tribe did not stop. Led by the mother, they spread out into a wide semicircle, their bare feet kicking up clouds of amber dust. They began a rhythmic, thunderous clapping of stones, a sharp, metallic clack, clack, clack that echoed off the ravine walls like 1,000 snapping branches. The noise was a wall of sound, a collective roar of human spirit that seemed to vibrate through the very air. The mother stepped forward, her chest heaving, her eyes locked onto the predator with a gaze that held no fear, only an unbreakable demand. She was small, and the lion was a king, yet in that moment, the balance of power shifted. The lion let out a low, chest-rumbling growl, but his tail stopped twitching. He looked at the trembling sticks, the flying stones, and the fierce, wet eyes of the mother. He sensed something he rarely encountered in the wild, a courage born of absolute love rather than physical strength. Slowly, almost gracefully, the lion lowered his head. He opened his massive jaws and gently placed the bundle onto the yellow dirt. There was a heartbeat of absolute stillness where even the wind seemed to stop. The predator took a long, lingering look at the tribe, then turned and began to melt away into the shimmering heat haze of the horizon. He did not run. He simply vanished into the golden light, leaving the clearing as silently as he had entered it. The infant lay still for a second, then let out a small, sharp cry that broke the tension like a physical blow. The mother did not run. She fell. She collapsed onto her knees beside her child, her hands trembling as she scooped the small life into her arms. She buried her face in the infant's neck, her body shaking with silent, racking sobs of pure relief. The rest of the tribe gathered around them, their jagged stones dropping unnoticed onto dry earth. The sun began to dip below the horizon, bathing the entire savannah in a deep, burning orange glow that turned the yellow soil into gold. As the first stars began to blink in the purple sky, the tribe stood huddled together, a tiny, fragile island of life in a vast and indifferent wilderness. The great baobab trees stood as silent witnesses to a miracle. The savannah had taught them a hard truth. Nature can be cruel, but it also bows to the power of a mother's bond. The golden grass swayed gently, whispering the story of a day when shadow stole a life, and love won it back.